Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is nice to see you all. Now, as many of you know, although some of you may not, my daughter, Hannah, who is almost 18, about 12 years ago, had a rather unfortunate incident with a Reese's Pieces. That is to say, with one of those small little peanut butter candies. Having a severe peanut allergy, and having been told this was an M&M, we ended up in the emergency room. That was her first time with a large dose of epinephrine, and obviously, as she is now 18, 12 years later, she survived. Just. It was touch and go for a little bit, and as I look out and see some parents in the room, I think you can imagine what that feeling is like. And I think you can also imagine that afterwards, we were incredibly vigilant about everything else that she was going to eat. And not only have we been very careful, but so has she. Now, this means that yes, there are certain things that she can't eat, and certain things that even if we could eat them, we're not going to have them in our house, let alone, or eat them, if we were out on a picnic in front of her. So I haven't had peanut butter for a very long time. But is it worth it? Absolutely. Because every day she doesn't have to use her EpiPen is a day that I gladly give up any peanut products. Now, this also means that we have to be very careful when reading the ingredients of prepackaged materials. Just because it says it's kosher doesn't mean that it is peanut-free. And we have discovered that every manufacturer has their own unique way of telling you whether or not something has peanuts, nuts, tree nuts, or any other variety of description. And so you have to navigate. Well, this one says that it was made in a facility. This one says it may have been made on machinery. This one says tree nuts. This one says peanuts. This one just says nuts. It can drive you nuts trying to look for some standardization, but a little inconvenience when picking out packaging, definitely worth it, I think we can all agree. And it means that when we're talking to caterers and the food handlers and such, that sometimes we have to ask an additional awkward question. The people who work at Bagel King, who often cater events, back when we had more in-person events, they knew us and our family on site, and that meant that as soon as we all went into the social hall for a special oneg or kiddush luncheon, there would always be somebody right there ready to tell my daughter, this has peanuts, or this doesn't have peanuts, this is okay, stay away from this. They were ready and working, but not every server and staff are as prepared to answer these questions. And so sometimes there would be a little bit of a back and forth, as you might get the initial answer of, well, I don't think there's any peanuts in it, which, while honest, is very unhelpful under those circumstances. And so there would need to be follow-up questions. The person would go and talk to the manager, and we'd sit there for a few minutes waiting for a response before knowing whether we could actually eat something or no. But is the inconvenience and the social awkwardness worth it? Obviously. Parashat Shemini, this week's Torah portion, gets a lot of attention for the first half because of the great drama of Aaron's two sons, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But the second half introduces something that has been even more pervasive in Judaism, even if we don't always enjoy reading about it. Kashrut, keeping kosher. The second half of Shemini gives us all of the rules, with a few more to come a little bit later on, but the general outline of you can eat this, you can't eat that, these are the animals that are okay, these are the animals that aren't okay. We've already been told about certain parts of the animals earlier on. It is an extensive set of rules and requirements. Much like we have to judge how we choose various products, whether or not they have peanuts for my daughter, so too Judaism asks us to have the same diligence when we are choosing what we are going to eat, whether we are going to eat from this animal or that animal, prepared this way, prepared that way, and all the rest. And so I'll ask you for that question as well. Is it worth it? In the case of my daughter, is it worth making a small concession of time and social inconvenience and a little bit of a financial consideration of always going the extra mile? Obviously, if it keeps somebody alive, of course it's worth it. The answer is very simple. But keeping kosher, if you eat bacon, will you die? And I'm not talking about eating so much bacon that you clog your arteries. That'll kill anyone. I'm just saying in general, if you were to break the laws of kashrut, is it a poison to Jews? No. As many people will attest who are Jewish and have eaten things that aren't kosher, myself included when I was much younger and before I embraced observance, you can eat non-kosher food and do just fine. Put non-kosher food under a microscope, and there is nothing inherently dangerous to Jews inside of that material. Take it to a nutritionist and they will tell you that it has the same nutritional value as other types of food. There is nothing wrong with it. Nothing that is bad for our bodies. Well, maybe it's worth it for another reason. Maybe when we eat that which is kosher, maybe there is some form of transubstantiation. Maybe when we eat kosher food, as it enters our body, it is infused with extra spiritually transformed and created vitamins. Maybe? No, not so much. I have seen plenty of people who eat only kosher food that are very unhealthy overall in their diet and their physique. It is not as though eating kosher food is somehow magically transformed into something that is better for our body than non-kosher food. So, is it worth it? What is keeping kosher actually doing for us? If it's not preventing our death, if it is not getting us some sort of physical superpowers because of the transformation of this material in our bodies, why go through the inconvenience of reading packaging, checking labels? Why go through the inconvenience of limiting what we are able to eat from the great variety of that which is edible in the world? Why go through the inconvenience and awkwardness of having to double check of, no, really, is this something that has no meat products, no shellfish, no mixture of meat and milk and all of the other things? Going through the expense of having separate dishes, of having separate pots and pans, of all of the palava that goes into keeping kosher. What are we getting for this? The answer is obvious in the case of a food allergy. It's not so obvious in the case of kashrut. Well, the answer has been, there have been answers given throughout the centuries of many different variety of things, but I'd like to talk about one. Kashrut has a unique flavor to it, if you'll pardon the expression, in that it is something that pervades our life. And as such, it has a unique capacity to provide a constant reinforcement, a constant addition of one brick at a time to the retaining wall of our Jewish identity. Statistical studies and demographers have found that keeping kosher is one of the best indicators of whether you will still have a self-identified Jewish personality identity 20 years from now. If someone does not keep kosher today, they have a reduced chance of still identifying as being Jewish in 20 years. If someone does keep kosher, they have a greatly increased chance of still being likely to identify themselves as Jewish. Now again, this is not because of the magic of the meat. This is not because of some transformative process. But it has to do with the fact that when you choose to eat something that is kosher, you are choosing to repair all of the small little cracks and breaks in that retaining wall of identity on a constant basis. As any dentist will tell you, daily maintenance is much more effective than annual checkups. Now, they're both needed, I'm sure. Don't worry, I'm not trying to put you out of business, Bernie. But if somebody only goes to the dentist once or twice a year, that will certainly be better than nothing and absolutely maintain them in better oral health than if they went not at all. But if they are brushing and flossing, and they are doing so, of course, multiple times a day as recommended by their healthcare professional, they are going to find better results in maintaining the strength of their mouth. And so too when it comes to Judaism. And unlike many of our other mitzvot, kashrut is something that is very obvious, very external, and very constant. So that we have a chance with every bite, we have a chance with every dish, we have a chance with every purchase in the grocery store to be reinforcing that sense of, this is part of who I am. It is not a huge inconvenience. It is not an insurmountable burden. This is not something that takes only a Herculean effort. This is something that allows us to have that bit by bit, bite by bite, chance to reinforce that we are willing to identify as somebody who is Jewish and to repair the breaches that come from the constant wearing away of our identity by the great wash of political, economic, sociological, cultural forces that would like to turn us into something else, that would like to simply erase the inconveniences of Judaism, that tell us that there are limits on what we should do, that there are rules that we should follow, that there is a moral code that we are asked to live up to. By repairing the breaches through the observance of kashrut, we are strengthening our identity to be sure that we can follow the highest aspirations of being Jewish, the highest calling of the wisdom of our ancestors, the highest ability to be able to transform ourselves and the world. That doesn't make kashrut magical. That doesn't make kashrut mystical, although there have been some that have tried to argue that, and I'm not trying to take away from them. But what it does make it is one of the best single activities that can be done in a routine way to give strength to your sense of self as a Jew, to give strength to your strength to your sense of self as someone who can live up to this ideal. Each opportunity that we have before us of what we are choosing to eat is an opportunity to remind ourselves that we have that ability, that power, that strength to make those decisions and to do so in a way that will prepare us better for the next and the next and the next. With that, Shabbat Shalom. If you'd like to learn more about kashrut, let me know.